Across centuries, the House of Rothschild have wielded unprecedented dominance, blending familial solidarity and relentless profit-seeking. From modest roots, they rise to influence international finance, wars, and politics, and become the most formidable banking dynasty of their age. The Rothschild banking dynasty has an unlikely origin, an 18th-century ghetto in Frankfurt, Germany. Like many of his time, Mayor Amschel Rothschild can't own land or farms due to his race, so he follows his family's path and becomes a textile trader. The ghetto was not very encouraging. Shops spilled heaps of second-hand clothes and soiled household goods into the alley. Frankfurt Jews are barred from farming, from handicrafts, even from dealing in nobler goods such as weapons, silk, or fresh fruit. Mayor Rothschild quickly grows discontented with trading textiles and becomes eager to explore other ventures, ones that offer higher profit margins. He soon discovers that trading gold coins and antiques could be much more lucrative. Mayor Rothschild quickly establishes himself as a shrewd trader and uncovers a brilliant strategy known today as front-running. He worked as a court agent, much like today's stockbrokers. His main client was Prince William of Hesse-Kassel. Whenever William wanted to purchase gold coins, he would ask Mayor Rothschild to obtain them from the market. What Rothschild did was this. He would first buy the coins using borrowed money, then sell them to Prince William, effectively acting as both the buyer and the seller. This practice is known as front-running in modern terms. In doing so, he profited twice, once from the 8% commission fee, and also from front-running Prince William. By 1782, Mayor Rothschild has amassed a colossal fortune and earns the position as the investment manager for Prince William's vast wealth. But for Mayor Rothschild, it's just the beginning. To truly create a strong footing in the world of finance, he must evolve into a bank. Often, when traders and court agents accumulated significant wealth through their financial dealings, they sought greater recognition and respectability. Transitioning into banking was a way to gain legitimacy and credibility. Getting into banking proves genius for Mayor. By the close of the 1700s, he's the richest man in Frankfurt. But still, for Mayor Rothschild, it isn't enough. He envisions a legacy beyond wealth. A family dynasty that stands the test of time, outlasting nations and empires. To me, it's always what's next. I think that's what drives most very successful people. It's never about the money. I mean, that's a way of keeping score. It's about achievement, and it's about winning a game, and it's about upping the ante. To do that, he knows he needs to think bigger than just Frankfurt or even Prussia. To expand, he dispatches 4 of his 5 sons to the great capitals of Europe: Vienna, Naples, Paris, and the jewel of the empire, London. In the early 1800s, Great Britain stands as a global superpower with a vast empire across continents. With the British Royal Navy unmatched, the seas are theirs. The Industrial Revolution is transforming the economy, making Britain an industrial and manufacturing powerhouse. The financial sector, centered in London, is robust. With the establishment of the Bank of England in 1694, London becomes a global financial center. Mayor Rothschild has built a thriving banking business in Frankfurt. But he realizes to sustain the long-term prosperity of the family, he needs to expand to different major cities in Europe, including sending his 3rd son to London, England. The name is Nathan Rothschild. For Nathan Rothschild, the pressure is immense. He feels compelled to demonstrate to his father that he is equally capable of upholding the family legacy. Nathan was a fiercely ambitious and competitive man, as quick to take offense as to give it in his business dealings. His father gave him as investment. Nathan plans to maximize it as quickly as possible by any means necessary. In the early 1800s, London taxed-out industries saw significant growth. This industry was marked by many small-scale workshops and factories that produce many different types of textiles, from cotton to silk. Nathan sees an opportunity to capitalize on this growth while maximizing profits. He managed to create 3 sources of profits from the textile industry. According to his own account, Nathan was successful in his early days. I soon found that there were 3 profits: the raw material, the dyeing, and the manufacturing. I said to the manufacturer, "I will supply you with material and dye, and you will supply me with manufactured goods." So I got 3 profits instead of 1, and I could sell goods cheaper than anybody. In a short time, I made my £20,000 into £60,000. To ensure a consistent revenue, Nathan also ventures into the lucrative realm of smuggling textiles and precious metals. He became, in a word, a smuggler. By 1808, Nathan had earned a reputation as a man who had, thanks to his superior management, judgment, foresight, and connections, regularly succeeded in getting goods to the continent. Within just a few years of initiating his business in London, Nathan reports impressive growth sales of £800,000. Now, with substantial capital at hand, Nathan sets his sights on transforming his enterprise into a bank. He plans to build it to be bigger than his father's bank in Frankfurt. By 1812, Mayor Amschel Rothschild's health deteriorates rapidly. He soon realizes that death is inevitable. And to ensure the House of Rothschild remains prosperous, he urges his sons to put their family unity first and above all. This is one of the foundations for the long-standing success of the Rothschild dynasty. Their strong bond as a family and their unique way of doing business are reasons they're still successful today. As the Rothschild sons establish their banking houses in different cities, Europe enters an age of wars set to span over a century. Whereas the 18th century wars have tended to be limited, had tended to end in a truce where people sat down and negotiated. The wars of the 19th century, at least some of them, became increasingly ideological, increasingly difficult to stop. Thanks to its sophisticated finance system, the United Kingdom wages 6 wars in the century without facing an economic collapse. Today, we live in a world dominated by a single superpower, the United States. Indeed, it sometimes seems a little bit as if we've become part of the American empire. Yet Britain was the world's superpower for more than 2 centuries, exerting even more power beyond her borders than the U.S. does today. By 1814, the Duke of Wellington wins battle after battle against Napoleon and plans to bring the fight to France. But while in France, Wellington realizes the need for a significant amount of French coins for expenses. Wellington's campaign was being fought at a time of unparalleled fiscal overstretch. In protracted campaigns like Wellington's in the Iberian Peninsula, more sophisticated methods of procurement were necessary. Above all, it was essential to be able to purchase supplies and to pay troops. Nathan sees this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If he can meet this challenging demand, it can elevate his bank to unprecedented heights. Nathan subsequently made what he had done sound easy. When I was settled in London, the East India Company had £800,000 worth of gold to sell. I went to the sale and bought it all. I knew the Duke of Wellington must have it. I had bought a great many of his bills at a discount. The government sent for me and said they must have it. When they got it, they did not know how to get it to Portugal. I undertook all that and I sent it to France, and that was the best business I ever did. By the mid-1800s, as Europe turns into a hotbed of war, its countries increasingly need the foreign exchange market. To start a war, you need money. If you lose a war, you often have to pay the other side. For the House of Rothschild, wars become a profitable business. Their network of banking houses provides a unique competitive advantage. Back then, the modern banking system was just starting, so they could charge high fees, sometimes as much as 8% for providing currency exchange services. But revenues from commissions are just a small part of their income source. The Rothschilds understand that in the world of finance, information is everything and speed is king. They were one of the earliest successful forex traders, using private carriers and even leveraging both trained horses and pigeons. The Rothschilds stay steps ahead of the competitors. As a result, currency speculation becomes their most profitable business. The profit for the London house keeps rolling in, and Nathan Rothschild becomes the richest man in the world. But even the most powerful man in finance can't defeat the ultimate enemy. On July 28, 1836, the unexpected happens. Nathan Rothschild, the wealthiest man in the world, dies at the age of 58. This was surprising because the Rothschild family was known for living long lives. In fact, when Nathan died, his mother was still alive, and she lived to be over 90 years old. The London Times gathered itself up for one of its rare superlatives. The death of Nathan Mayer Rothschild, an editorial said, is one of the most important events for the city, and perhaps for Europe, in a long time. No operations comparable to his have existed in Europe to this time. Nathan Rothschild's death has a huge impact on the market, but the House of Rothschild lives on without him, thanks to a decentralized banking system they have created. The banks of Rothschild's family continue to thrive, but now they need a new leader. Nathan Rothschild's youngest brother, James Rothschild in Paris, becomes the commander-in-chief of the family dynasty. For James, the pressure of being a Rothschild is immense. While government bonds and war financing remain profitable businesses for the family, the competition saturates the playing field, eating away at their profit margin. To bring his family new glory, he looks for a new edge. Nathan's youngest brother, James, was markedly less submissive to his will than the other three. The youngest brother was intellectually and temperamentally Nathan's equal. He also had the advantage of a better schooling. Even in acknowledging Nathan's leadership, James was less than deferential. James Rothschild soon sets his sights on a new burgeoning industry, the railroads. In the early 1800s, Europe witnesses rapid railroad expansion, starting with England's Stockton-Darlington line in 1825. Railroads revolutionized transportation, foster industrial growth, enhance trade and reshape landscapes, ultimately connecting major European cities and regions. Throughout the 1840s, the Rothschilds provide financing for many railway ventures, reaping substantial profits from commissions and trading railroad bonds and stocks. The Rothschilds were clever with their money. They often use other people's money to reduce their own risks. James Rothschilds play a big part in what was known as syndicate in France during this time. By now, the Rothschilds are more than bankers. But the bank remains at the heart of the family business and generates the funds that are then invested in assets that are in increasing demand: metallurgy, mining, and above all, railways. While profits for the House of Rothschilds soar, average people struggle to make ends meet. The income disparity between the rich and the poor remains as pronounced as ever. The industrialists of that period of time are people who are out for themselves, to make large fortunes as quickly as possible, even if it means pressing the envelope of what they have to do. After suffering consecutive wartime defeats by the 1840s, the French government finds itself deep in debt, and as a result, the nation's economy teeters on the brink, leading the French populace to grow increasingly resentful of both the government and the financiers backing them. Within days, the Rothschild Bank in France nears its breaking point. As the head of the French bank, James is desperate to save his institution. He turns to his nephew in London, Lionel, the son of Nathan Rothschild, for assistance. The French Revolution brought their houses in Vienna and Paris to the brink of insolvency, obliging the others in London to bail them out. By then, the Rothschild family's banking business had been around for almost 2 generations. For Lionel, bailing out his uncle's branch poses a significant risk and at a potential loss. However, to him, family unity ranks above all else. His London bank arranges a loan, saving his uncle's bank from collapse. But it doesn't stop there. Lionel Rothschild believes in prioritizing his family, but he also feels compelled to uplift his people. Lionel thinks that to further the cause of eliminating prejudice against people of his ethnicity, it's beneficial to enter government. I know he had a lot of money, so he used the money to buy a lot of press to help him get elected. By the middle of the 19th century, most of the restrictions on British Jews had been done away with. The Commons passed a bill permitting the seating of a Jew. In August 1847, Lionel de Rothschild mounted the hustings as Liberal candidate for the City of London. Lionel was elected. There is a problem. To be fully sworn in as a member of the Commons, he would have to recite an oath to the Holy Scriptures. But Lionel refuses and insists he will swear only on the Old Testament. Becoming part of the government is monumental for the House of Rothschild. As James Rothschild ages, Lionel gradually assumes the role of the family's patriarch. But what Lionel doesn't realize is that, though the House of Rothschild reigns supreme in Europe, a new banking empire emerges poised to challenge their dominance. The early success of Rothschild is largely attributed to information, intelligence, and knowledge. Nowadays, learning anything is much easier as we have access to vast resources online. One of the best ways to learn math, data science, and computer science interactively is with Brilliant.org. Brilliant is fantastic because it offers more than online learning. It's interactive, visually engaging, and perfect for busy individuals. Complex topics are broken down into bite-sized lessons, making it easy to master concepts with just 15 minutes of practice a day. Recently, I've diving into their cryptocurrency course, learning about blockchain, and it helps me get a better understanding of crypto projects and whether they're worth investing in. Brilliant offers interactive puzzles, riddles, and games, allowing you to enjoy the learning process. Without having to simply memorize facts, they expand their courses with new content monthly, including how large language models work. A course designed to help people stay ahead of the AI wave. Additionally, you get to learn practical skills that can potentially enhance your professional career for lifetime. Visit Brilliant.org/Phineas or click the link in the description for a 30-day free trial. The first 200 customers will receive a 20% discount on their annual premium subscription. Thank you, Brilliant, for sponsoring this video. Junius Morgan is a British banker of the merchant banking firm, George Peabody and Company. By 1864, upon Peabody's retirement, Junius takes control of the firm. Junius Morgan always had a gravely mature air. He was the sort of prematurely middle-aged young man old financiers found consoling. He was solemn and businesslike and always master of his emotions. Junius Morgan understands that to play in the big league, he needs to venture into government financing. And for a banker in the 1800s, nothing presents more opportunities than wars. In 1867, France tries to purchase Luxembourg from the Netherlands. However, Prussia opposes the move, leading to rising tensions. The Chancellor of Prussia, the notoriously ruthless military man, Otto von Bismarck, waits for an opportunity to strike. On July 19, 1870, Napoleon III declares war on Prussia. This declaration aligns perfectly with Bismarck's aspirations for a war that would further German unification under Prussian leadership. From the very beginning, Bismarck had a wild temperament, and it was very difficult for him to rein it in. He had these two sides, a clear intellect and tremendous precision. It was the combination of his wildness and his intelligence that drove him to escapades, drunken excess or duels or fencing. Bismarck always wanted defense to prove his manliness. I see him as a raging bull. Having financed wars for a century, the House of Rothschild possesses an uncanny ability to predict if a country will win or lose. They have no faith in France to defeat the formidable Otto von Bismarck, and it will not make sense to lend money to France. While major banking houses like Rothschild and Baring avoid lending money to the French government. Julius Morgan sees this as the opportunity of a lifetime. It doesn't matter to him if France can win the war. What's crucial is if France can repay the loans. He quickly understands that even if France loses, the nation's economic resilience ensures their capability to pay back the loans. Although French politics was very shaky at a time, the French economy was very diversified, and more importantly, it had a very efficient tax collection system. Through his syndicate, Julius Morgan raises over £10 million for the French army. As an American banker, he also grants the French government access to purchase American arms. The war resulted in a decisive German victory. The conflict ended with the Treaty of Frankfurt in 1871, leading to significant territorial losses for France and the proclamation of the German Empire in the Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles. When the war ended, the defeated French didn't renege on the loan, as Bismarck predicted. Instead, they prepaid the bonds in 1873. As a result, Julius Morgan walks away with a fortune from this windfall. The loan netted him a whopping £1.5 million. This vastly augmented his firm's capital and propelled him into the upper ranks of government financing. And now, the House of Morgan has become a formidable force in finance. While Julius Morgan strives to establish his banking dynasty, the House of Rothschild faces mounting challenges. Following the death of James Rothschild in 1868, the younger generations of Rothschilds become increasingly fragmented. To rebuild their prestige, they look beyond Europe, investing heavily overseas, allocating 37% of their portfolio to Egypt, and financing Indian railroads. But to truly recapture their past success, they need a more expensive marketplace. As old empires fade, a new empire emerges, bigger and more powerful than any of the world has ever seen. From the 1850s to the 1870s, America experiences significant growth. Propelled by the Industrial Revolution, westward expansion, and the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad in 1869. This era witnesses the ascent of industrial magnates. Cornelius Vanderbilt reigns in railroads, Andrew Carnegie in steel, and John D. Rockefeller in oil, culminating in the formation of Standard Oil. These tycoons transform American business, introducing innovations and fresh organizational structures. This story of America isn't just the story of the patriots that helped build the democracy. The reason United States is leading the economy in the world is because of the work of entrepreneurs who create entire industries that propelled the United States to be the leader of the free world. For years, the Rothschilds underestimated America, deeming it a land of madmen. But seeing the rise of the House of Morgan and Wall Street's emergence as the new global financial hub, the House of Rothschild starts to pursue more business opportunities. And nothing presents better opportunities than when there is blood on the street. For America, that day arrives on May 9, 1893. Following decades of a booming railroad market, the industry, plagued by overexpansion and overbuilding, suddenly collapses. The result is one of the worst depressions in history, the Panic of 1893. The President Grover Cleveland is determined to maintain the gold standard and refuses to engage in expansionary fiscal policies such as tax cuts and increased government spending. Back then, the U.S. dollar was not the main global currency. The British pound was. President Cleveland felt that to maintain the credibility of the U.S. government, he must maintain the convertibility of dollars to gold. The Cleveland government is running dangerously low on gold reserves, so he calls on J. Pierpont Morgan for assistance. Around this time in the late 1800s, Judas Morgan had passed away in a traffic accident, making J. Pierpont Morgan the head of the House of Morgan. The federal government is days away from depleting its gold reserves. Morgan understands the outcome will be disastrous for the young country and for his own banking empire. And he knows there is one family with access to a vast amount of gold that can help the federal government, the House of Rothschild. For the last 3 decades, the Rothschilds have been strategically investing in mining operations for gold and silver. Their interests in gold mining grew rapidly. Moreover, many of the bond issues handled by the Rothschilds in this period were linked to the recipient's adoption of the gold standard. J. Pierpont Morgan raises $65 million by issuing government bonds and uses the money to negotiate with the Rothschilds, purchasing 3.5 million ounces of gold for the Fed. Back then, banks really liked doing business with the government. Why? Because governments usually pay back their debts, and they can always collect more taxes if needed. The collaboration of Morgan and Rothschild makes their bond offering one of the most sought-after investments. The gold bonds sell out in 30 minutes when offered to the public. America enters the world scene as a new empire, one that rivals any in the history of the world, a superpower. While the Rothschilds successfully expand their business reach in America and throughout the world by the late 1800s and early 1900s, the old empires in Europe head for another major showdown. By the early 1900s, tensions among European powers reach a boiling point, fueled by imperial rivalries, military buildups, and complex alliances. While the path to war threatens businesses with potential catastrophe, the House of Rothschild sees an opportunity to capitalize on the growing tensions. The head of the London Rothschild Bank is Nadi Rothschild. He advocates for the British government to expand its naval capabilities. So many European countries started to spend more on their militaries. For that, they needed money. What the Rothschilds don't realize is that the war that is about to unfold will be more brutal and deadly than any they have ever encountered before. Following the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary, Europe plunges once again into full-blown war. Look at Serbia. Serbians are saying we don't want to be ruled by the Austro-Hungarian Empire. That's an old, tired, imperialistic structure. We are our own country. It's the Serbians who assassinate Archduke Ferdinand and his wife Sophie. And of course, that's the trigger that begins the whole conflict. This war features trench warfare, new weaponry, and results in massive casualties with an estimated 10 million soldiers and 7 million civilians dead. For the first time, members of the Rothschild family align with opposing sides. Though the Rothschilds survive World War I and even profit from war financing, their scale of operation is overshadowed by the rising banking dynasty in America. The House of Morgan, now led by J. Pierpont Morgan's son, Jack Morgan. The Morgan Bank serves as the key financier for the U.S. government during World War I, raising funds through war bonds and extending crucial loans to European allies. In 1935, the Jewish Chronicle ventured to suggest, with perhaps a hint of relief, that the Rothschilds' heyday was waning. The most intellectually gifted of the next generation of Rothschild men turned his back on the family business. After World War I, the House of Rothschild finds itself in disarray, and different banking divisions pursue various objectives and become more integrated into the countries where they operate. At the same time, Europe sees a surge in anti-Semitic sentiment, driven by economic hardships and political unrest. The Rothschild family, as prominent Jewish bankers, faces heightened scrutiny and hostility. In Germany, following its defeat, the nation endures one of its most severe economic downturns. A new kind of leader harnesses the anger of the German public and swiftly rises to the position of chancellor. His rise to power spells trouble for the House of Rothschild, especially the German banking branches. In 1939, just 21 years after the end of World War I, the biggest war in human history erupts. In the spring of 1940, Hitler secures victory after victory. Denmark and Norway quickly fall under occupation. Next, the German army sweeps across the Netherlands and Belgium. Europe makes a desperate stand in France, but it's no match for German armor and air power. And by June, Hitler's in Paris. Britain is the Germans' next target. If Hitler conquers Europe, the House of Rothschild will face its certain demise. While some Rothschild members engage in resistance movements against the Nazi occupation, Many flee Europe to escape persecution, seeking exile in safer countries. When German tanks rolled into Paris in 1940, the French Rothschilds were in grave peril. The older ones, Edward, Robert, and Maurice, managed to escape. They ended up by sundry paths and stops in the United States or England. As a result, the family endures significant financial and personal losses as their assets are seized and properties confiscated. General Eisenhower informs me that the forces of Germany have surrendered to the United Nations. The flags of freedom fly all over Europe. As the Rothschild dynasty becomes increasingly fragmented, N.M. Rothschild of London takes on the challenge of rebuilding and carving out its own direction. For N.M. Rothschild and Sons, their core competitive advantage remains government financing. This has also been the core strategy of the Rothschilds. They worked closely with the government to finance big projects. The Rothschild believes that as long as they had good relationships with the governments of strong countries, their business will always do well. Rather than aiming for expansion, Rothschild preserves its business model as a private club, financing elites while evading public scrutiny. By the 1970s, a future media mogul seeks N.M. Rothschild's assistance. His name is Robert Maxwell. Maxwell served in the British Army during World War II. After the war, he worked for British intelligence and later entered the publishing industry. In the 1950s and 1960s, Maxwell acquired several British publishing companies, including Progoman Press and Mirror Group newspapers. He had traumatic beginning to his life as a child, and most of his family were wiped out in the Holocaust. I think the experience of extreme poverty and the great concept of God in life not being thought became an absolute imperative. But to expand his business empire, he will need money, lots of money. The type only powerhouses like the Rothschilds can provide. In the 1980s, Maxwell's investments look like they're doing well, but trouble is brewing inside N.M. Rothschild. Lord Victor Rothschild and his son Jacob are on one side, fighting with their cousin Sir Evelyn de Rothschild. Around this time, the banking world was changing a lot. Bigger banks were acquiring smaller ones, making them megabanks, and new ways of making money like derivatives and options came up in the 1980s. These new tools help banks make more money and also help them manage risk better. Jacob Rothschild believes the bank must adapt to modern corporate strategies and pursue aggressive expansion. Sir Evelyn, who leads N.M. Rothschild and Sons, asserts that modernizing the ownership structure risks the family's absolute control. He insists the Rothschilds' bank must always be wholly owned by the Rothschilds, even if it demands short-term sacrifices. But family drama soon become their least concern. A massive scandal erupts, threatening the Rothschilds' reputation. The millionaire newspaper publisher Robert Maxwell is dead. He disappeared overboard from his private yacht early this morning while cruising off the Canary Islands. In the early 1990s, revelations surfaced that Maxwell misappropriated hundreds of millions from his employees' pension funds to sustain his enterprises and luxurious life. I feel that, and I've grappled with this a lot. I feel that possibly the line between suicide and an accident is less clear-cut than we tend to assume. Maxwell's mysterious death in 1991, after vanishing from his yacht near the Canary Islands, spurred investigations into his financial misdeeds. While the Rothschilds' involvement in Maxwell's demise remains unclear, the event blemishes their reputation. But for Sir Evelyn de Rothschild, the scandal reaffirms his beliefs about the bank's need for discretion and privacy. But N.M. Rothschild is still just the tip of the extensive Rothschild legacy. By 2023, the Rothschild family diversifies its interests across multiple sectors, extending beyond traditional banking. Their enterprises encompass investment banking, wealth and asset management, private equity, and philanthropy. The original banking establishments in Paris, Frankfurt, Vienna, London, and Naples, once the bedrock of the Rothschild banking dynasty, have adapted to the evolving financial landscape. While banking is still central, the family's influence now permeates a wider range of financial services. Throughout history, the Rothschild family was often not hesitant about making more money. But when it comes to maintaining family legacy, they were able to let go of those opportunities. This kind of long-term view is both respected and scary.